I don't know, I know you're in this room. Please join me, this double whammy of Dan Gilbert and Jack Dorsey that we're going to serve up now. I don't think you've seen anything quite like it. I hope it's as good as I think it's going to be. Dan, there he is. How about that? Thank you, man. Come sit here. He has been a big supporter of this event, I got to tell you, and I appreciate that it continuing.
They were selling these shirts outside. I bought one.
So, what do you think about us trying to do this thing in Detroit?
This conference?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's great. I think that any time folks, especially from out of town, can come to Detroit, talk about technology, talk about all the great things not only going on here, but that's going on nationwide to give us some framework to what's happening. I think it's a great thing. Hopefully this is just the beginning.
Awesome. I mean, you told me that Quicken Loans, well, you have a line about it. I don't know if I want to feed it back to you, but what kind of a company you think Quicken Loans is in terms of technology? And well, I'll just say, you said, Quicken Loans is a technology company that just happens to do loans or something like that.
Did I say that?
Yeah,
I said that?
It's a nice line. But so that is a really good thought, and it's interesting, like MasterCard has a similar thing, they say, where a technology company happens to just do credit cards, and Chevron's been advertising it. I mean, it is a very smart way to think about any company, but it is still a quite rare way to think about companies. So, I mean, if I were to summarize why we're here, we want more companies to think that way.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, especially a company that is not necessarily selling a physical good or something. I think there was a panel earlier where people talking about manufacturing, actually, the need to make things and to sit in things and to look at things and to drive things. That's still a very important part of the economy. But when you're in a business like ours, which is the home lending business, I mean, you're really just acquiring information, curating that information, and moving that information, if you think about it. Because, a mortgage, yeah, it's true, it's a loan. At the end of the day, you're writing a check and there's an interest rate. But for us, technology has completely transformed our company. Not even transformed it, but become our company, because what we do is we process and close loans in 3,000 counties in 50 states out of a centralized environment. And it's moved, everything moves with technology and by technology and in some form of a process. And the better we can get at technology, we have, I believe, 700 or 800 and growing technology, full-time technology people right here in Detroit, just on the Quicken Loan side, and we're hiring a bunch more and looking for a bunch more. So we grow through technology. What we sell is a commoditized product that's not a real physical product. And so we're going to beat everybody by having a great experience for our clients, which is definitely pushed through by technology.
What do you think about the idea, though, that there's hardly a company around that doesn't need to have some version of that mentality?
I believe that. I mean, I believe it's true. I think that, not having the focus of your company, whatever it is you're doing, beyond technology, not willing to invest in it, is absolutely going to be a killer thing for you. If it's not going to be next year, it'll be the year after or in 5 years. But
you don't mean killer in a good way. You mean killer in a bad way.
Yeah, killer. Here in Detroit, killer's a bad. We say, you don't say like, in West Coast they have certain terms. People. I've gotten caught that way before because people say words and it means the opposite. I mean killer in a bad way. It's gonna hurt your company. Yeah. And it's going to be a situation where you're going to wish you invested in it years ago. Because these things, even technology, although there's some things that happen overnight with it, there's still not a lot, but there's time that has to go by. You have to invest in the people and get them up to speed, and the technology doesn't happen. And I know some of our technology people are here. I know sometimes we push them like we'd like it to happen overnight, but it doesn't always happen overnight. So you have to invest in it and be real and realize that it will pay off for you if you do the right things.
So let's just go to something more urgently relevant to Detroit. One of the things that has blown me away, I have to say, since we started coming to Detroit and talking to your people and researching what was going on here, is the incredible commitment you personally and the companies that you operate have made to the city. And I guess a lot of people who are from Detroit may have heard this before, but I'd like you to explain here for our national, we got 1,000 people on the live stream last I checked, by the way. Why have you made such a big set of commitments to downtown Detroit? And give us a summary. I heard somebody today say you had 3 million square feet. Last I heard it was 2 million. You must have just bought some new buildings.
Well, it's actually 2 million of office space and retail, and it's 1 million square feet of parking, but I don't think everybody always uses parking in the square footage.
No, they don't, actually.
Yeah,
But it sounds good to say 3. Go ahead.
It does. But I think it's something like
2's
40.
not bad.
Yeah, 2 and 4,200 parking spots, which we all know in Detroit, it's in any big city, they're always in demand, parking spots. But anyway, our commitment really comes from 2 different places. I mean, one is myself and a lot of our people, leadership, as well as just people who've been at the company for a long time, and even some new folks have been born in Detroit, raised in Detroit, or raised around Detroit, if not in the city. My personal situation is my father and my grandfather were both born in the city and had small businesses in the city. And so there's a definite affection for the city and a huge motivation to see Detroit become something very, very special, and especially in light of what's happened here over the last several decades. So there's that piece of it. But the other piece of it is not so much from the altruistic standpoint, it's from a competitive standpoint, from a business standpoint. Like I told you earlier, like you asked, we're a technology company, and if we're not a technology company, we're a marketing company, and then maybe after that, we're a lending company. So if you want to attract the kind of brains, and a lot of them are around this area, and whether they're coming out of Michigan State or University of Michigan or Wayne State or the dozens of other great universities around here, or they're just people maybe who didn't even graduate, who also are just technology-minded folks, they want to be in an urban core. I mean, it's no secret, and it's nothing special to Detroit that people in their 20s and 30s and coming out of the universities and elsewhere want to be in a vibrant, exciting urban core. And so our view was, look, we're not going to be as competitive to get those kinds of folks in our business if we're in a nice building in the suburbs here. It's just not going to happen because this generation coming up and even older, that's not where they want to be. So it's twofold.
Well, I know you also have a belief that, first of all, it's rarely been a case where one person has had the ability to sort of, or the will to have such an impact on creating an urban core. I mean, you had an incredible palette of raw materials here that were being seriously underutilized, but I mean, the degree to which you've sort of taken that bull by the horns, to mix some metaphors here, has really been incredibly impressive. I mean, you told me on the phone about, the real estate thing kind of happened almost as an afterthought. You first just wanted to be here, and then, right. Talk a little bit about how you got to be so big in Detroit real estate after you decided to move Quicken Loans into the downtown.
So we originally came down, believe it or not, it's only 25 months ago, and in some ways it seems like 25 years because we've all been so busy, all of us. But we came down originally in Pete Carmanos' building, CompuWare's building, which is a beautiful building built in 2003 with another technology company there. And if it wasn't for him, there's just no way we'd be down here because he helped in recruiting us, and he had that great, attractive building. So just like he had that attractive, nice, newer building with a lot of action going on, that was attractive to us to come down. We felt to continue to grow and make sure that all of our thousands of people who were at various locations in the suburbs would be excited about coming down here, we better get our hands on some of the real estate. Now, the good news for us was there was a skyscraper sale going on, and it only happens once every 100 years or so. And a few of them were on eBay, and so we bid them up a little bit, but they were there. They were beautiful older buildings built by some great architects that just needed a little bit of love, and we were fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time. So we bought these buildings, and in no short time, our great team was able to redo these buildings on the interior. We're doing some things on the exterior, some things in the lobbies, and make them into something that's 21st century technology, and we moved everybody down.
So what's the next stage for downtown and Detroit more broadly?
So a lot of people ask that question a lot, and we think about that a lot. And I don't necessarily look at it in terms of stages. I think that every day we're just trying to improve things. Every day we're trying to take advantage of opportunities and inches, as we like to call it, that are around us. And if there's other real estate that is available, we might look at that. If there's a way to convince others that have nothing to do with our businesses of why it's a great thing for you to be downtown and great for your business, we'll participate in that. What's good and what's even a little bit surprising to me is how much our people right away, and we have 6,500 people downtown here, and most of them around Campus Martius, and the way they've engaged Detroit in the community, and not just what we're doing, but the other things that are happening, to me is just a testament not only to what kind of great people we have, but how if others were to come down here and join us or move parts of their organization here or open up their next new office down here, how much they're going to be ahead and how much we're all going to be ahead, because that's how it works. You know, I mean, capitalism and free markets are a great thing, and when people can get in at a fairly decent price and they're not restrained from creating things, great things can happen in a short period of time.
I don't know if you were here earlier when Tim Draper was talking about, you know, he's a great entrepreneur and financier and a venture capitalist, and he was just saying we have too many rules. And he was talking about a bill. He didn't actually explain it quite this way on stage, but he bought this old hotel in San Jose where he's building a school for entrepreneurship. He calls it the Draper University for Heroes, I think, which is kind of a funny name. But he was telling me on the phone, and he mentioned it in a different context, that because he's changed the usage, he's got to widen the elevators by 7 inches. And that could cost him, you know, like hundreds, maybe millions, just to do the elevators, because it's no longer a hotel, now it's going to be a school. So, and he really was railing about the problem that he encounters and that he thinks the U.S. economy encounters with overregulation. And now, you had said that there were some instances where you've bought buildings and then discovered there were some restrictions on their use you didn't expect. So, I mean, is that an idea you share?
Well, look, this has been going on, unfortunately, in our country for way too long. And what happens is that people take out the big, broad brush, right? So, you know, some regulation of some things may be needed and may be the right thing, and 99 out of 100 people would probably agree to do it. But the problem is the folks who are sometimes enforcing these and coming up with more of them just view the regulatory environment as a broad brush, and they just, you know, sweep the whole thing in, and then silliness happens, right? I mean, I actually go through a few examples of this in our isms class that we give every month to new team members. I mean, the Chicago school system to this day requires blind kids to pass driver's education, driver's training to graduate. That's still a thing today. Yeah, you can go look it up. Go Google it. I swear it's true. And you know, there's craziness. We have a building here, 1920-something building. I forgot what year exactly it was built. The first national building. There's some historic credits, tax credits that are involved in that, and they, at least initially, and still to this day, we're trying to get through it, but they're not allowing us to take out 1960s ceiling tiles that were put in. I don't think there's anything historic about that. We're trying to restore it back to what it looked like, but to the view of certain bureaucrats or regulators, that actually looks like we're touching the building and making it not historic. So, you know, we got to sort of get over this kind of thing, this silliness, because it eats up so much time and effort and money that otherwise would go to creating better things. And I think there's a Goldilocks with this stuff, right? You know, not too much, not too little, but you know, you can't have one side or the other. If you just have nothing and no rules, and not, you know, you're gonna have bad actors. But if you have too much, you're just crushing the good folks with the bad folks, and it doesn't do you any good either.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people have been asking us why we're doing Techonomy in Detroit, and I've done a bunch of interviews about it. And one of the things, you know, there's just so many. What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Oh well.
Why you came to Detroit?
Well, I completely lost it. It's the end of a long day. Listen, guys, I'm sorry, but so I do have some things written down, so that helps. I wanted to ask. Sorry. I'll think of it like just when we're in the middle of something else. But what's the one thing that Detroit needs to do that it isn't doing? It's basically about, you know, the pace of change. Forgive me for jumping back to my mental lapse. But, you know, we talk a lot about the things are moving so much faster than most leaders realize, right? That's the point. And that, you know, this is true for business people and particularly, in my opinion, for government leaders. And I think this may be even more dangerously true in a place like Detroit. That do you worry that with that kind of regulatory issue and overload, effectively, that, you know, the things that are happening uncontrollably because of the incredible progress of technology and the empowerment that it's giving to individuals and the ability to organize things regardless of what government wants, and plus the fact that some other countries understand this stuff better than we do, that those sorts of sort of gridlock problems are going to put us in a really bad situation. I guess that's what I'm trying to long-windedly
Yeah, you know,
ask.
when I was listening to your last panel here, the young lady talked about what I think a friend or a sister of hers had to go through to open up a coffee shop in Detroit. Well, that's crazy, right? I mean, there shouldn't have to be, hundreds of steps or 50 steps or useless things that people have to do. It should be about the ends, not the means. In other words, if the means aren't going to be any benefit to the city, the community, or the business owner, or the customer, or anything, just because some regulation, when it's read in its strict context, expects you to do this and this, then it should be stricken and it should be gone. And there again, I think there's a balance, but it's going to have to take a different sort of philosophy, a different philosophical approach that, look, good businesses, I mean, most business people are good people. There's sometimes you watch the movies in Hollywood and they characterize the corporate greedy people and all that stuff. Obviously, there's a handful of them, but most people want to do the right thing. Most business people are good actors and care about their community. And we just have to have a philosophical understanding and change that, business is what creates jobs. Business is what creates a tax base. Business is what builds residential properties. Business is what creates technology. So, I think it's come a ways in certain areas. In certain areas, it's gone the other way. But over time, business people are pretty adept, and they find ways around things, and they figure out how to get it done, even if it takes longer and costs more.
But do you agree with our argument that the pace of change is accelerating to the point that a dangerous number of leaders don't get that?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. I mean, we've seen it in industry after industry. I mean, you only have to look at, the newspaper industry. You only have to look at the automobile industry a couple years back, and obviously they've come a long ways, but they had to go through a major transformation and restructuring to get there. So for sure, you've got to be able to make decisions probably way faster than you used to. And if you pay people for the value of their judgment, especially leadership, and they're not willing to judge, then you probably shouldn't be paying them.
By the way, I want to just explain the way we're procedurally going to do this. We're not going to take questions now for Dan, because we're doing it sort of talk show style. And when Jack Dorsey comes up, he's going to be here. We're going to do questions for both of them later, and we're going to have some conversation with Dan and Jack together, which I'm looking forward to. One of the things, Dan, that you told me is that you don't think somebody has to have a college degree to work for you, and you sort of alluded to that earlier. Can you explain a little bit your thinking on that?
Technology people are in such demand today. They're so much of a hot commodity that if there's a technology person that is skilled at a certain part of it, whether it's a database person or a web developer or somebody who understands mobile or whatever it might be, I mean, college degree is just an irrelevant thing. If they have that skill or have the experience or have the know-how and the motivation, for us it wouldn't be something that you have to check the box in. It just wouldn't be. And there's a lot of people, not a huge amount, but there's a lot of people who don't have college degrees who have taught themselves. I mean, a lot of these guys in our company today have just, somehow they were, whatever you want to call them, computer geeks growing up, and they taught themselves, and we'll hire them in 2 seconds flat without worrying about the college degree. But if they're from Michigan State degree, then we really give them more money than they otherwise would have. That's good.
So one of the things that did come up in the last panel was this issue of the neighborhoods versus downtown, right? I mean, you are practically a magician in what you've been doing downtown, and I got to say, it's a very exciting place compared to what I expected. And I'm amazed. And by the way, actually, here's a question.
Is that the other one?
Yeah, it's my mind is working in a circuitous way today, but I meant to ask you this before. What are the chances you can bring it? Today Apple's announcing all this stuff. What are the chances of getting an Apple store in downtown Detroit?
It's funny you ask that. So we have on our whiteboard in several of our rooms where we brainstorm and saying, this is our wish list, right? Certainly Apple is right there near the top. We've made some inquiries, but we're doing a few other things that I wish I could talk about right now, but I can't, that once they get to a certain place, we'll be able to put them all together and hopefully convince a company like that, which would be a great store. And plus, I think the store would just be tremendous for them and be one of their top-selling stores. I truly believe that, by the way. And there's a few others like that, too. So we're working on all that. In fact, when you asked what's next, retail for us is absolutely huge, because you have a lot of folks who have this belief now that the downtown in Detroit is much safer than people thought it was, and their preconceived notions. But now the next thing they ask is, okay, I can get over that, and I believe that, and the numbers show that out, but where am I going to shop? Where am I going to go get this? Where am I going to go get that? So, for us, we're in this big bang approach that we believe we have to do a lot of it within a short period of time. So, the builders of residential can't say nobody's going to lease my apartments because there's no retail, and the retailers can't say, well, who am I going to sell my stuff to? There's nobody living here, so we try to do it together. And I don't mean the same moment, but over a short period of time.
Yeah, one of those statistics that blew my mind when I first started checking out Detroit was the idea that there wasn't a single real grocery store in the city. And then Whole Foods becomes the first one. Like that is a testimony to a changed demographic landscape, but it's still not the full solution. So going back to the question I started to ask.
Well, if they're Whole Foods, they would be the full solution, right?
No, that's
think about that, right? Just for that. I mean, they would say that, right?
Well, I think they would be the solution if they were really Whole Foods. Okay. But anyway, so the idea of so you're really saying that there's what you're trying to put together is some kind of aggregation of simultaneous sort of retail innovations that maybe could be presented on a silver platter and maybe bring everybody in at one time kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's not just us. I mean, Capitol Park is going to be developed. We met with those developers recently. They've got financing ready, and I don't know if you know where Capitol Park is, but it's very close here to downtown, in downtown actually, and there's a whole plan there that's going on. There's some talk of some other stuff just north of us. The Broderick Tower, which has nothing to do with us, is opening very shortly, which is a great new residential project. So yes, it is us, but there's more than us, and there's more coming, and that's the one thing I want to sort of express more than anything is that there's a lot of capital around this area in the suburbs and some in the city that really should be put to use for their own good and for the city's good. It's going to be a great return. They're going to make a lot of money in the long run and maybe even in the medium term run by an investment in the city. You can feel the energy. The companies are here now, and there more are coming, and jobs are coming. So, we're all the time trying to talk to residential developers and retailers to get as much down at the same time because the demand for sure is there. It's there.
One of the things I found fantastic when I first met Bruce Schwartz, who was on the previous panel, who's working for you, is he handed me his card and it said Detroit Relocation Ambassador. And I thought, wow, I have an employee whose job is to just bring other people here is a really nice way to think about it. So I have to congratulate you for the mindset there. But going back to this issue of the neighborhoods versus the downtown, how do you see that playing out over time?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a versus, neighborhoods versus downtown. There's a lot of people doing a lot of great things in the neighborhoods and engaging in the neighborhoods. Clearly, there's some major challenges that are not just from the last couple years, but they're decades-old challenges, if not even longer than that. So there is some huge sort of ingrained challenges, and we all know what they are. I mean, their education and their crime that comes from maybe not having as much education as we need to, or as a good of an education system as we need to. But these are being addressed. I think the main thing here from the city of Detroit standpoint with Mayor Bing and the council is that finally, right, we are addressing the financial cloud that was overhead for years and decades that was never dealt with before. And although it's not completely addressed yet, it is really finally happening and being addressed because without getting the city's finances in order first, none of that other stuff can start to happen and be addressed. But our view is, and our mission is, downtown, the heartbeat of the city. I don't think neighborhoods could flourish in any big city without a strong downtown. I just don't think it happens. I ask people to point me to one example, and nobody can. So to me, it's not mutually exclusive at all. There's a lot to be done in both places, and of course they work hand in hand because a strong downtown is going to create more and more jobs for folks who will live in those neighborhoods or do live in the neighborhoods now and want to live in those neighborhoods.
Well, and one of the things also that came up in the last session was this question of, tension between the suburbs and the city and the idea that it's not as bad as it used to be, but it's still pretty bad. I mean, and then there's this whole issue of sort of, I have to say as a New Yorker where I think we've done a really good job in New York of getting beyond some of this racial stuff. There is still a sort of racial tension overlay to some of the politics in Detroit. And I guess I'm curious whether you think that is going to go away in the near future, because wouldn't that be so great for the city if there was more of a collegial working together kind of spirit here?
So first, I guess I'll address the suburbs and the city thing. You know, you heard, or I've heard in the past, before we were engaged in Detroit, about all this suburb city stuff, and I just personally, and I don't think our people either have noticed so much of that today. You know, we had 600 college interns in downtown Detroit this summer, and they represented 157 colleges and universities from all over the United States, but still, the majority of them were from Detroit and the suburbs of Detroit, you know, probably 80% of them. And so there are black people, white people, Asian people, men, women, you name it. And, you know, not only is it never an issue within you don't even hear about that kind of stuff, whether racial stuff within our company or even around our company, but, you know, people are focused on the same goal. People want the same things. And I just haven't noticed, you know, everybody had always talked to me in the past, when you get down there, you're going to see this racial thing and white and black. I just, maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm insulated, but when it comes to our engagement with the city or with the community or with folks that work for us or vendors or unions, we just never have seen it. We don't see any problems with it. We don't experience it. Now, you know, I can't say there's nothing that goes on at any time, but we don't sort of even acknowledge that. We're all on the same page, we all have the same goal, and that stuff sort of becomes secondary and irrelevant to us.
Well, that's really good to hear. I'm glad you said that. And actually, Josh Linkner said something similar in one of the panels earlier.
Now, we have a Linkner issue, but that's a whole other thing, so you want to know.
You guys work pretty well together, it seems to me. I don't know if Jack Dorsey's within earshot, but if he's ready to come out, I'd love to get him out here. Yeah, there he is. Come on out, Jack. So what we're going to do is the
I move over like
Jay Leno thing.